podcast is provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as legal, business, investment, or tax advice. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own opinions and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of RCM Alternatives, their affiliates, or companies featured. Due to industry regulations, participants on this podcast are instructed not to make specific trade recommendations nor reference past or potential profits, and listeners are reminded that managed futures, commodity trading, and other alternative investments are complex and carry a risk of substantial losses. As such, they are not suitable for all investors.
Welcome to the Hedged Edge by RCM Ag Services, where we're getting out of the field and onto the mic to bring you weekly market updates, commentary from commodity experts, and monthly interviews with the biggest names in agribusiness. All right, heading out to South Dakota here now. Going to catch up with Brad Berven. He's out of Jess Farms in Pierre, South Dakota. Brad, welcome to the show today. Thanks for taking the time. I know it's a busy time right now.
Good morning. Yes, it is very busy.
That's good. Well, I can see some sun in the background, which means we only got a few minutes before you got to get back out there and get cranking, right?
That's right. Got to get back in that combine.
Real good. Well, what's interesting is you and I haven't had a chance to meet, but I've been out and met Jim and Harvey and Andrea a number of times. And what I really love about coming to South Dakota and going out to Jess Farms is it's one of the most progressive farms in really all of the country that I've traveled. And just want to catch an update from you guys, how things are cranking along here with harvest. And I know you've got a lot of corn and beans rolling. So give us a quick update. What's been going on out there?
Well, we had a pretty good mix of crops this year, and we started out harvesting pinto beans about the 15th of September and got that done in September and knocked the beans out the first week of October. And now we've been doing corn and sunflower since.
Yeah. Now with everything that's happened this year, 2020, wildness of the pandemic, really, did you guys see much slowdown at all, and what your plan was and how you were going to run the farm for this year? Your whether it was changing corn or beans or any of the double crops that I know Jim likes to get involved with.
Yeah, it didn't change the cropping plan a whole lot. We tend to follow the marketing opportunities and try to capitalize on those. Probably the coronavirus impacts, probably the biggest thing is getting parts and, keeping everybody well and working.
Yeah, I think one time when I was out there, I think you had 2 or 3 tires blow in the same hour. So you don't want to have a problem there with the pivots. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's there's a lot of maintenance that goes along with the pivots and of course with the farm equipment, but it's parts have been more challenging with a lot of the suppliers, the manufacturers not working as much. Some of the supply it takes longer to get parts. Yeah,
I've heard that across the country for sure. How are the yields coming in for you guys?
Yields, we've had a pretty good year. The weather was pretty decent. We had a fair amount of rain. It got dry at the end of the season. The yields for the most part have been holding up. We did have a windstorm on August 27th that took down some of the corn and some of the sunflowers, but some of the hybrids held up better than others, and overall it's been good. The corn has been actually a little bit above average, and the sunflower's been hanging right in there where we expected them to be.
That's great. And I know you've had some trouble with hail in the past. You have any battles with that this year?
No hail this year. We were happy about that. We did have that windstorm. We on our weather station, we had peak gusts for over about 10 minutes of over 90 miles an hour. So that gave the crop some stress.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate scenario. That customer, farmer that passed away there, I think up in Aberdeen area. He is
absolutely. The
Yeah.
gentleman from Gettysburg, yes.
Gettysburg, yeah, he's been a longtime customer of ours. I was sad day thinking about their family throughout all this. So
Absolutely.
so tell us, when you talked about taking advantage of the marketing opportunities, with again the kind of come back to the pandemic and then where we are today, bases seem to really slide off, particularly in the ethanol industry. I know you've got the local ethanol plant by you. When
Yes.
things really slowed, it's kind of a big backlog. Where are we now from where they were in terms of basis?
Well, you're right. The bases did slide off, but like unlike a lot of other areas where their plants closed or temporarily shuttered, ours kept going. So we were able to continue to deliver corn, and our the farm's marketing was able to keep a pretty good basis that had been locked in earlier. So it didn't affect us a whole lot.
Yeah, it's good. I know Jim has always done a real good job forward pricing and being progressive, in terms
That's
of
right.
marketing. So yeah, kind of really put him at the top of the list of producers out there that I've come across over the years. So that keeps things rolling in the right direction.
That's right. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. What about one thing that I know you guys do a lot is you have obviously the farm plan with everything going on, but then oftentimes you'll do some test plots and do a few things that are a little different, just to kind of see what might work. Was there anything interesting this year that you were working on that might be interesting to share with everybody?
Well, I don't have results yet. Unfortunately, we did some tests with a couple different fertilizers. A foliar liquid, and then a newer dry fertilizer called Poly 4. But I don't have the results yet because we're still harvesting those crops. Of course, we do have our corn hybrid test plot, and that's still in the field also. So I don't have anything that I can report yet.
Okay, we'll have to check back in with you if that's all right. A couple weeks, couple months. That'd be interesting. Right. Okay. Good. Well, what about the storage side? Have you made any additional progress, adding more storage, or really sticking with what you have and then kind of moving the rest?
Yeah, as far as grain, we haven't added any more storage. We did did put up a crop ring to take care of overflow corn, which, by the way, that windstorm damaged. So,
yeah.
But we have put in about 10 cone bottom tanks for fertilizer, so we can store fertilizer and capitalize on some lower pricing at times. And then we've got it right there when we need it. So we've put in those cone bottom tanks, and we do occasionally use them for some grain storage. So that's the only addition at this point.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, more and more for on-farm storage happening across the country. Just always curious, where people are in that process.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's really important to have that storage so that you can market, when you want to market, rather than when somebody wants to, when you're forced to because of lack of space.
Right. Exactly. That's good. Last question on the farm, then we'll jump to a couple last kind of favorite local questions I have for you. On the irrigation side, do you feel, or are you seeing this year, did you use about the same amount of water? Is it how much variation do you have in the amount of water that you actually use?
Well, on the sunflowers, of course, we didn't put a lot of water. They take a lot of water, but they're very efficient at using the water that's in the ground, and so you can get the best benefit out of putting a couple inches on right at the time that they're blooming, and that's what we did. Most of the sunflowers didn't get any more than 3 to 4 inches of water by irrigation. The corn was a little less than normal. Normally we're running 10 to 12 inches on corn, right. And this we were in that 8 to 10 inches on corn, and beans it was about 20% less than normal as well. So we did have some timely rains, especially early and in the middle of the season, but overall it was slightly less than normal.
So less water, better yields. It's overall pretty good year.
Yeah, that's right. It's turning out well.
And higher prices now than we were, obviously, in the throes of it.
That's right. That both corn and beans have bounced back nicely. So yeah, we appreciate that.
That's great. Good deal. Well, that's a great update from your side. I gotta ask a couple of more fun questions. Not that it's not fun to talk about the farm, but just get to know you questions. So I know Jim's a big Bears fan, but there's a lot of Vikings fans in your area. You, where's your allegiance?
Well, I grew up in Minnesota. So,
oh boy.
That's, but as Minnesotan, as a former Minnesotan, we're used to being disappointed.
Well, we're pretty disappointed right now in the Bears. They obviously don't seem they're the worst 5-2 or 5-3 team, whatever we are in the league.
Yeah, it's been a strange year for football.
Yeah, we'll see. As long as you weren't a Packers fan, I guess I'll give you a pass.
Oh, heaven forbid.
So your spare time, you prefer hunting, fishing? It's pheasant season right now. What's your go-to?
Hunting and fishing. Yeah, that's this is a good place to be if you like to hunt and fish, and I do, and I like to collect guns, so it all fits together well.
That's good. Do you all still rent out to the state some of the fields there in the winter?
That's right. The whole farm nearly the whole farm is a walk-in area, and which allows access for upland game hunting, and then the waterfowl hunting is regulated by game fishing parks. They assign people to pits and fields, and will provide decoys if you need them. So yeah, it's pretty good deal for the sportsman.
Yeah, I've always told Jim I got to get out there for a hunt with him, but instead he sends me pictures of all the deer and ducks that he shoots, and I just have to be jealous.
Yeah. This is a great place, and we got a lot of pheasants too. There's a lot of good pheasant hunting, sharp-tailed grouse, and occasionally an elk wandering around. So.
Wow. Last local question for you. Do you prefer Bob's out on the river or La Rosa's there in town?
Oh, I like Bob's. Yeah.
Ribeye there is massive ribeye.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, the best.
That's good. Very good. All right. Well, Brad, I really appreciate you taking the time today. Is there anything else you care to share from your side, or leave you to your day?
You did a pretty good job covering it. So yeah, I don't have anything else.
Cool. Well, we appreciate it. Tell the family and the group out there we said hello, and we'll be catching up with you here. Hopefully next time I get out your way, we'll meet out at Bob's for a beer.
That sounds good.
All right. Thanks for the time. Enjoy the day.
Bye.
All right, here we go. We're going to go out to Reed Trusty. He's in Mississippi. Actually, that's where you're at today, right, Reed? You mentioned to me a minute ago you travel quite a bit. Are you in Mississippi today, or where are you?
I am. Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to the show. This is the Hedged Edge, obviously. And what we like to do is kind of get out there, talk to people. And today we're getting the chance to go around the country. What we're hoping to kind of catch is a little bit of an update on harvest conditions down in your area. How things have finished up for some of the crops, how it's getting going for some of the others, and really just I guess might as well talk about it. The post-election attitude from guys. Kind of a wild few days here. So before we jump into all that, give you a chance to go ahead and introduce yourself. You work with Local Seed, which is an exciting seed company that's been really evolving over the last number of years. I had a chance to meet you guys in your office, so yeah, give us a little bit of your background, Reed.
Yeah, so thank you, Jeff, and I appreciate you having me on. So,
Absolutely.
I'm in the position of VP of Sales for Local Seed Company, which is a relatively new startup. We launched the company in the fall of 17. 2018 was our first cropping season, so we just finished our third season. Looking forward to 2021. Have had incredible customer reception. It's been a fun ride, been a wild ride, not been without its pain points, as you well know.
Sure.
Starting a new business, but we have a footprint that is focused on the Mid-South and then up the East Coast, what we refer to as the Smile.
Okay.
So we have cotton states, we have grain states. So, we think we understand, as a company, we think we understand how to service multiple cropping systems really well. And that enabled us to, in the Southern United States, to go to the grower direct versus approaching the market through a traditional retailer.
That's great. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, geez, starting the business in 17, the markets of 18, then obviously the wet conditions of 19, and now, pandemic 20. Boy, that's a wild ride.
Yes, certainly. So yeah, we said if we could survive this 3-year stretch, all is well going forward, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I agree. And interesting, conditions. Just we'll get to the seed part of it, because I do have some questions about that.
Sure.
But before we do, maybe what would be helpful, seeing as you're in a unique position that you actually are out talking to people in the Smile, and that'll give you the chance to kind of hear. This was I was traveling down through your area. Boy, what was it? June, early June, and then in July, crops looked amazing. Everything was pristine. I've never seen such beautiful looking fields. And then we had a little bit of change in conditions thereafter. You guys had some crazy weather. Call it, maybe a hurricane or two, or how many?
4 or 5. Yeah.
Or 5. Okay.
Yeah.
So what ended up shaking out here? We're pretty deep in the harvest. Give us an update.
Yeah, so considering, that I would dare say the lower Mid-South is 90% done with harvest. Upper Mid-South probably has somewhere between a third and half the crop left to go. The corn is out, but the cotton and the soybeans are probably maybe halfway done. So,
okay.
But considering the conditions and the 5 storms, we have fared the weather. We've come out pretty positive, Jeff. So the yields were tremendous. We had great yields. We've obviously taken some quality nicks on soybeans and some on cotton. We did have some areas where we lost 200 to 300 pounds of cotton due to the wind and rain from the storms that came through. But all in all, and considering and we'll get into this later, considering the cash run up we've had in the last 6 or 8 weeks, I think we're going to be okay as we look at the economics going into 21. It actually may be a brighter picture than we've had in some time.
That is a really good news. Really, really, really good to hear. Overall, obviously, bumper crop followed by this impressive rally in prices. It's one of those, maybe let's not forget government payments that guys received. So, I'm thinking people be paying their bills, expanding their operations. Question for you on prices. So, have you seen basis tightening up pretty steadily in your area?
Yeah. So, we're kind of a tale of two worlds, those that are on the river and those that are, anywhere from 30 to 60 miles off the river. So
Sure.
You understand that well. Bases have not been as uniform as one would think. And so, which tells me that our buying points have different positions. So, but they've been mostly positive, Jeff. And I think a lot of people early on that had crops that were planted early and were able to get them out early really captured some upside and some value in terms of favorable basis. Now that's not been quite the case on the backside, but still, as a general rule, if you compare year over year or year over historicals, pretty positive in terms of basis.
That's good. That's we're seeing that really across the country. Kind of ramp back up of ethanol, increased Chinese demand. People getting back to work, so more people needing grain.
Yep.
Interesting question I have for you is, as I was talking with some of our colleagues, Bert Farish and others, as we drove through the area, really talk about the change in infrastructure that's happened in the Delta over the last few decades, as it primarily started out more cotton, and then it shifted more to corn and beans, and almost abandoning the ability for people to raise cotton.
So what you saw
about that? Yeah,
and probably began the local cotton infrastructure. Probably the erosion may have started in the early 80s in the traditional farm crisis that we've all heard about, right? And I was just a small child at the time.
Sure.
But that probably started it, and you saw infrastructure in terms of gins and warehouses and even mills in the Southeast start to leave us locally, and things became outsourced. And I can remember as a child, you could go 10 miles in any direction and see a cotton gin on the side of the highway. I mean, there were 10, 12, 14 cotton gins in a county, right? And today there may be one or maybe one in two counties. So that infrastructure left us. And some of that was driven by favorable grain prices. It started in the late 90s. Then that kind of tapered off, and we had the resurgence, as you well know, and the big run up 8, 9, 10 and beyond. And also came with us being more educated and growing grain. And we figured out, hey, on this fertile Delta soil where we have landformed ground, precision landformed ground where we can water down the road, we can make some really nice corn and soybean crops. So it was a little bit of multiple factors that led into the demise of cotton. I hate to say it like that, but then in the last few years, you've seen a little bit of a resurgence. It's just, and it's a shame to say as we get into the Delta, because there's so much positive that comes along with growing cotton. Now, I dare say in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we were cotton heavy. Every acre was cotton. There was no diversification. And so, you lived and died by lint, right?
Right. High risk, high reward. Right.
Yeah, that's not good for anybody. So I think we're starting to find a happy medium. One of the some growers may be reluctant to get back into cotton just because the sheer cost of the harvest machinery. But
I think I just saw an article about a farmer that said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to do it. Go buy that $1 million picker." Yep. And that's a big investment, especially if you have nowhere to take it.
That's right. And as we've improved as a grain growing region, obviously there's been additional infrastructure in terms of buying points, and more importantly, as you've seen, there's so much on-farm storage that's gone up since 2008 or 9. It's incredible.
Absolutely.
So you've got guys that have invested there that are going to stick with the grain, and then you've got guys that do it all, right? That farm cotton, rice, soybeans, corn, even peanuts from time to time. So we've become pretty diversified.
That's good, and it's can be interesting too as cotton prices do rally, and you have to do the math and figure out, is it worth to plant corn, beans, or cotton? So
exactly.
I kind of transitions over into some of the seed questions. Is what are you seeing? You're starting to see some early orders, early purchases. Guys, what's the mix look like?
Well, so we've got a little bit of delayed harvest due to the weather that we discussed. So I dare say we're going to have a delayed buying season. It just makes sense. But
don't tell Charles that.
No, Charles doesn't need to hear that, right? So, but no, we surpassed. We have a late October prepaid date followed by late November, late December, and so on, which is an industry standard. And So we surpassed our 2019 prepaid dollars, but we've grown enough that we should have. So we're probably flat in terms of prepaid dollars.
Okay.
And I think what you've seen with this depressed farm economics, that a lot of guys are having to put investment back into equipment, update some equipment, P&K or fertilizer maintenance on their land, drainage. And so there's some things that are on their mind that are priority before they go out and purchase seed, I think, Jeff.
Okay. Yeah, that's coming up here. You'll start to hopefully get some meetings together and start talking about the different the different varieties, and I guess some of the updates related to seed. When we were talking, I guess yesterday, you said there's some new technology or new updates on the trait front related to the seed. Maybe if you could give a quick update there.
Yeah, certainly. So we have a heavy footprint. Probably our greatest share of market comes in the Mid-South, so the Arkla Miss and West Tennessee and the Missouri Boot Heel, and which has traditionally been
a duck hunting area, right? That's traditionally a duck hunting area.
It is that, but that's a part of the world that from year to year is going to grow between 8 and 10 million acres of soybeans. It's a big soybean area.
Yeah, big.
I don't know if you followed what's going on with the trait game in soybeans. It's been interesting and certainly been challenging for all seed companies, but especially for a small independent like ourselves. So in 2017, the Extend trait received registration, and that trait has taken a large share of the market, especially in that Mid-South footprint. But I think in 2020, there were roughly 50 million acres of Extend soybeans planted in the U.S. So
now, real quick, just in case the listeners and viewers don't know exactly what it means, the trait, could you explain how that applies to the seed?
Yeah, sure. So the Extend trait, or the Enlist trait that we'll talk about in a minute, allows our grower customers to make herbicide applications over the top of those crops to take care of what have become glyphosate resistant weeds. So this all started in '96 with the advent of Roundup Ready, right? And that GMO. So now we've moved on to basically a stack with Roundup and dicamba. And we're actually throwing a curveball. On June 3rd, the Ninth Circuit Court vacated the labels for those 3 low vol dicamba formulations that we were spraying over the top of those crops, and really caused some uncertainty in the market. Since then, some positive things have happened for our grower customers. On September 29th, we received EU approval, import approval for the Extend Flex trait, which is generally the last step in that import approval process. Okay. And then in late October, the EPA, we received a federal label again for those low vol dicamba formulations. So those are positive. With that being said, there's certainly, especially north of the Mason-Dixon line, but even in some areas of the Mid-South, there's going to be some market share gains through another trait known as Enlist, right? So
how do you keep this all straight? I feel like you need an encyclopedia.
Yeah, and hopefully we can provide some value there and help our customers keep that straight, Jeff. So you've got this big trait battle, and it's a little bit scary because obviously one herbicide application can do a lot of damage, right?
Right, kill the whole crop.
In the media. So it's something that as an industry that we have to steward ourselves, and we pride ourselves in taking a part on our growers' operations in doing so.
It's kind of like the vaccine. It's like the coronavirus vaccine. Are you going to be the first one to take it, or are you going to be the first one in this case to put it on your crops, or raise that crop and then put the herbicide on top and say, yep, is it going to work or not? Right.
There you go. Yeah.
So that's your company though, was doing test fields and other I guess test plots to figure out if it really makes sense tied to seeds that you sell. Is that fair?
Yeah. There are five herbicide traits different options available in soybeans now. Ultimately, it probably narrows to 2 or 3.
Okay.
But yes, we've tested and offer all of those traits, which make production decisions that happen a year and a half in advance of the planting season. You know, it makes those decisions pretty interesting. We're sitting around the table this January and February making decisions for April and May plantings of 22. So it's a vicious cycle and a stretched out cycle, and you know, we only hope we bet right, and in terms of what the growers adopt, and more importantly, what those agencies like the EPA will mandate going forward.
It's really, you know, I really appreciate the opportunity having you on, because I saw an article just the other day, maybe it was on Twitter somewhere, someone referenced average yields from like the 1920s or 1930s. They had their APH down there, and it was something like, don't quote me, but 30 or 40 bushels an acre. And
Sure.
You start looking out to where we are today. I mean, truly one of the greatest advancements in modern agriculture technology history has been the advancement of seed and ultimately chemical. What I guess if you had to put a wish list out there, or forecasts, maybe make it a forecast to say, are we going to see those types of progressions? How much more can we go? Is it exponential, or is it, you know, a flattening eventually where you can only do so much?
Yeah, well, so the ceiling exists, but you know, Jeff, we continue to see genetic improvement and enhancement, and yield performance can, you know, just improves year over year. So can we continue to grow at the pace we're growing in terms of yield improvement? Probably not, but there's no doubt in my mind that we'll continue to improve as new genetics and new traits come forward.
And then for a company like yourself, the opportunity exists outside the United States, right? To be able to educate people in other countries. And I believe you guys are involved in some of that.
Yep. Just dipping our toe in the water there, Jeff. So a long way to go to understand everything involved there from a regulatory perspective and introduction and brand new geographies. But yes, we tend to try to be progressive and stay on that cutting edge.
All right. Well, don't give them away too much of the technology. We need our American farmers to have the edge. All right.
Indeed.
Good. All right. Well, I know your time's short here this morning. Really just wanted to touch base. Before I let you go, I do have a couple of quick questions off topic. So you're in Mississippi. So are you a Mississippi State fan or Ole Miss, or maybe you're a Razorback? What's your go-to college football?
Personally, I'm an Ole Miss fan. That's where I spent my time. So now that's not always well received in the farming community, as Mississippi State is the land grant university in this state. But no, we play nice with each other.
That's good. That's good. Well, you know, some of us grow up in split households. You know, you got to play to your audience a bit. Okay. Another one for you. So Bert tipped me off. There's something there in Greenwood area. Doe's Hot Tamales.
In Greenville. Yep.
Oh, sorry, Greenville. Excuse me. Yep. In Greenville. Tell what is Doe's Hot Tamales, and what do I need to go there next time I come to town?
Yeah, absolutely. So Doe's is an establishment that's been around since the 30s. That is well known for its hot tamales and steaks, and it's a really neat place with a lot of culture. And I certainly suggest you go try the ribeye there.
Oh, the ribeye. Okay, all right. Hot tamales and ribeyes.
Yeah,
that's good. All right, last question. This is more like a wish list. If you had one wish to help the farmers in your area be more successful in 2021 and beyond than you know they have in the past, what would it be? What would be the top on the list?
You know, I've got friends in this industry, so I hate to say this, but I hear this more often than anything else, Jeff, is although these technological advancements are carrying us places we've never been,
right?
At what point does the appreciation and the cost of the equipment stop? So, you know, where is that point, that breaking point? And it seems like we've almost reached there. So can we please stop with appreciation in the iron?
That's a good wish. I like that one. I think a lot of people will be on board with that. And
Yep.
you know that the banks, though, they like to continue to lend the money. So
That's right.
I don't know which side of the coin they're going to be on. All right. Well, good, Reed. Well, I appreciate the time, and I'm looking forward to next time we get together, and whether it's in Memphis or down in Mississippi. So either way, have a great rest of your week. I know you're hitting the road, and thanks for jumping on the call today.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you very much. Great. Now we're heading out to, well, Levelland, Texas. And if nobody knows where that is, all you had to be doing was watching the election. When they showed Texas, you saw Lubbock in the northwest panhandle, and then go how far, Jason, out to Levelland?
Well, in Plains, 75 miles southwest of Lubbock on the Mexico state line.
Okay, on Mexico state line. New Mexico state line. Good.
Yes,
well, anyway, I'm pleasure to bring Jason Swann on. Jason works for AIM Bank. He is a farmer himself, raising quite a few crops out in that area. And Jason, what's been going on out there? It's kind of an interesting time in markets, and an interesting time to be talking to West Texas.
I really think that this year, has been a challenge. The drought map that we have is really an indication of what kind of challenge it's been, as there's not been a whole lot of rain over here on the two western counties, over here in Texas. And I think the drought map is really indicative of what's there. In the drought map, you will see that these counties next to the state line are extreme drought or exceptional drought. I reside in Yoakum County, which is the only county on the state line that is completely in exceptional drought.
That's pretty dark red. The exceptional drought, which you're saying you've had no rain.
Half an inch since March, not including the last ice storm that we just received.
Wow. And ice and corn, beans, cotton, that doesn't go over so well.
So, initial grades, I think we're anywhere from a third to a half off of yields of what we were anticipating. Wow. They were going to be light anyway due to the rain. So, on some personal farms, we've seen, we hope to make a bale, make a half a bale. In those grades, we've seen those grades be in the high 50s, which is not bad, but they're short staple or high mic. We've not seen the combination of both yet, but with that last freeze, our bale counts and our modules are getting lighter. I think that you could draw the two counties that border the state line are going to be very similar to this situation. As you go beyond those counties, I think they received some rains, and I've heard some 56s in grades, and their production not dropping off as bad. But yet it's not a banner year by any means. Peanuts in our area were dug prior to the freeze, and they're not as good as the yields they'd hope, and they're hoping there's not any the freeze damage to them, but they hope they dried quick enough. But most guys in our area focused their water that they had remaining on those peanuts, grew those out, and then they're abandoning their cotton now. So the gin that we gin at personally, they were hoping to have 10,000 bales this year. They've revised that back to 5,000 because many growers are still abandoning acres just because it's not there. They're getting their adjusters out and they're not even going to attempt to harvest it. So I think abandonment in the South Plains area is going to be big. And then I don't know what the High Plains holds, as they got an October 15th freeze. We got some offices up there, and there's some cotton up in that part of the world, and it's going to hurt grade wise up there as well. So, I'm not just a bundle of joy today talking about conditions.
You guys, you're in a high risk, high reward area of the country. And for anybody who's listening in that doesn't really know the High Plains and West Texas, I've gotten off the plane in Lubbock, and the first time I got there, the person I rented the car from said, just watch out for the tumbleweeds. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I've seen the videos, but I what are you talking about? Next thing you know, you get down the road and these things are massive. What is it that is so different about your climate that people don't really realize? I mean, is it the altitude? Is it the lack of water? Is it just the the wind patterns? What's going on out there from that perspective?
Well, I mean, I think rainfall is the biggest one. When you receive an average of 12 to 15 inches a year, and you can get all of that not during the growing season. You could get it, our growing season being May to October, you could receive a large majority of that, say September, October, and then January, February, or, it doesn't typically do that, but that's going to, timely rains are a big issue. Sandy soils help us, arid climate, evaporation. We don't have the bug pressure that the Delta or the Midwest would. So, every region's got their own challenges. But I think that our limiting factor is water.
Yeah, water. And then you talk about, the current state of things. You had a big hailstorm come through that wiped out a lot of crops that actually did make it, because
it was more of an ice storm. We had a big ice storm, and there was some hail in that ice storm. Okay. And so some of these guys that are adjusting their fields out, they were weak to start with, and that hail on top of it, they're getting a multi-peril adjustment and a hail adjustment. So they're taking them both.
Yeah, well, I mean, from a banking perspective, which you've got a unique position in all of this, right? You are growing the crop, you're trying to select the best seed and chemicals and fertilizer to put on the ground. But then in terms of managing that risk of these storms, lack of water, whatever might come your way, making sure people have the insurance in place. They've got their hedge protections in place. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of the risk management side of the business as it relates to, you from the banking perspective?
No, when you asked me about the bank, I think we feel pretty good about our ag portfolio today. There's been a lot of government support that's come in and help us. I think most guys will be break even or a little positive due to government payments. Crop insurance is paramount, putting in risk protection to protect you in situations where you don't have a dryland crop. Used to, I think that you could, to be, people ask me all the time, what's a good farmer? And I would tell them, multiple facets. It used to be, you could just be a good producer and produce your way out of anything. Right. But then it became, you had to be a good producer and a good money manager, make timely decisions based upon the events that you've been dealt. And then those two together was what it required. Now it's a good marketer as well. And you have to put those three combinations together to be able to make a profit, because the margins are so thin in the ag world today.
And that's really the important part when you start talking about marketing is, making sure that from the bank's perspective and the farm, we know where break evens are from the beginning. Know where your downside, of course, is protected because of your insurance. But then when opportunities present themselves, need to take advantage of setting a floor. This year in cotton, we've been really fortunate, right? We've had a really ugly start with the COVID and coronavirus start to the year. Prices were dismal. And, since then we've had a massive amount of support in the price, largely from the Chinese demand, other part due to lack of production or quality. I was talking with a gentleman in the Delta earlier in the day, and they're having some quality issues over there because of all the hurricanes. Mm-hmm. So we've got some support in the cotton market. And so, kind of what we've done on our side is we've kind of raised the floor for the producer along the way to make sure that if it does flip and go the other way, we've got some protection in place.
And knowing your break even and having a floor set's very good from the perspective of the bank, because then this is what I can spend.
Right.
And this is what I can make decisions with some numbers now rather than just guessing. So that's really helped managers in our portfolio as well.
Well, that's good to hear. And, really, really hoping that, we do get the top blown off the top of cotton, but, we can't guarantee it. And, one thing that we wrote about today, and I'd be interested to see what you're seeing, again, you see a lot of different portfolios. What's it going to take for people to shift from corn, beans, peanuts, more to cotton? I mean, what price is going to be the trigger point?
Well, I think it's twofold. We've seen a level of input prices to be as high as they've been in a long time. And
Yes.
there's going to have to be some reset in those. If we saw some adjustments in some cottonseed prices this last year from retailers, and it was some of the older varieties, but still there were some adjustments made. If we can see some adjustments made within chemicals and other areas, I think that strike price is not as high. But I think anything with a 7 handle on it, I think is enticing. If you start seeing a 70 cent, a 72, a 75, I think guys in West Texas can pencil it for sure. Now, when you get into the high plains, I don't know, because they've got a shorter growing window, and then into the Midwest, I wouldn't venture a guess there because I'm not really the expert there, but into Kansas and those areas where they start planting cotton again. I think that the demand has to be shown in the marketplace, that the economy has to rebound, and that people are buying cotton and goods like that again. So, as long as I think we're in the 70s, to answer your question bluntly, I think we'll see a lot of interest moving back into it. If we're in the 60s and it in the future show to be in the 60s and we're only in the 70s for a little while, I think it'll be a slow movement towards it.
Yeah, I think you guys are an interesting spot because your infrastructure has built up to the point where you have places to take and haul your cotton all over town, all over the area. For somebody else in another region to say, hey, well, I'm going to start growing cotton. Well, they're going to have to buy a picker, $1 million picker. They've got to figure out then if they did raise it, where are they going to take it? So I really do think that bodes well for West Texas, and that even if prices do continue to this uptrend, you're not going to likely see the rest of the country suddenly say, I'm going to plant cotton. It's just not something you can turn on and off. So I think that bodes well for you guys.
Well, and the interesting thing too, while you're talking about different crops and things, there's been people dabbling with Pima cotton in West Texas.
Oh, I'm not familiar. But tell me more about that.
Pima is extra long staple. There's a lot of it grown in the Arizona region. Okay. It produces under stress. There's a lot of stuff that we're still learning about it here. You have to have a roller gin to process it. It can't go through a normal saw gin because it cuts that staple up. So they've put a roller gin in Maple, which is about 85 miles north of Plains. So there's some interest because there's some infrastructure put in place. It's harder to market. There's not as big of a demand for it, because it's a luxury item, if you will, almost. So that'll be interesting to see how that takes off, and if there'll be people trying to get into it rather than upland cotton.
That's interesting. And talking about marketing again, because it's kind of near and dear to my heart. Other places around the country, other crops, we're seeing an increase in on-farm storage, where effectively what ends up happening is the size of the farms are increasing. So what we're seeing is the trend where many of these, what used to be small mom and pop operations, are suddenly almost commercial grade farms, and they end up kind of handling their own marketing, bypassing some of the local elevators, dealing directly with buyers. What sort of trends along those lines, if any, are you seeing in cotton?
I don't think that's existed for cotton. I don't think that exists. There's some gins that are putting in their own, what we call the compress. Used to, there wasn't a high density press at the gin, so they'd have to go to the compress and high density press the bale before it was sold. Well, and so the name just stuck. It's really a warehouse now, but there's some warehouses going in for local gins over here. Suncot Gin, Denver City just put in one. So value add that they're going to add to their customer base, we don't know. Yeah. It's really hard for a farmer to hold that, because the margins are so thin, to hold theirs and then sell it. You can put it in the loan, but you're getting 50 cents for it, and you're hoping to get 65, 70 off of it. So there's not any on-farm storage, so to speak, for a farmer. Now, the next level up with a gin, we're seeing some gins do their own compress or their own warehousing.
Those mostly co-ops that are operating in groups.
I would say mostly the independents are the ones that are doing the co-ops are in with another cooperative that that has a compress in Lubbock in different areas, and they're parts of those. So they're tied in very well with them and into their dividend process. So they don't want to exit them because their dividends will help them in lean years and pay out. So, you got two distinct worlds. You have the co-op world and the private world, the independent world. So I think that there may be some movement towards that in the independent markets, but by and large, nobody's sitting and holding.
Okay, sounds like job protection for everybody at the gins.
Probably.
Yeah, I guess. Well, maybe what just happened is you just raised the minimum wage for anybody working over there.
Well, when the gins don't get enough bales to cover their fixed cost, it's going to be a tough year this year in our part of the world.
Yeah. Okay. Not too bad. Well, is there? You mentioned peanuts. I got to ask you about it because peanut is a different type of crop that most people aren't really familiar with. What is the I guess the germination cycle or the growing cycle for a peanut, and where do you sell the peanuts to? Obviously,
there's four major varieties of peanuts: Valencias, Virginias, Spanish, and runners.
Okay.
Runners is what you typically see in your candies. Virginias and Valencias are what you're going to normally roast and see in bags that you're going to ballpark peanuts is what people would call them. And Spanish, of course, got a red shell on them, a little skin, and you'll see them in candies and other mixed nut bags and those type of things. There's three major players in the market: Birdsong, Golden, and one Hampton Farms, Severn, Portalis Select. It's a one conglomerate of companies that operates under different names, and most of those guys distribute and sell to the people make peanut butter, candy companies, and those things, and they're direct contracted with those guys. And I would say that our area here in West Texas and Georgia are the big peanut areas.
So we work with a group of farmers up in the Dakotas that raise a lot of sunflowers, and there was a massive amount of dislocation in the sunflower market this year because Major League Baseball didn't have anybody showing up at the stands. And the players, who knows if they were even allowed to spit a sunflower seed on into the dugout. So peanuts kind of American staple of baseball. What did you guys see, or how did that get impacted?
Well, most of them are contracted before they're planted, so they've kept the contract. I think what we'll see is this coming year how that affected it. So I think we're too early in that process to know if it's really affected or not. I think sales were definitely affected, but a lot of it went on shelf, and got sold in peanut butter and different things. So they may have found different avenues for it. It depends a lot on the crop sizes as well, how much reserve is held and carried over into the next year. So I think we'll know a lot more come a couple months on what contract prices are coming forward and how much reserve is out there or how much carryover.
That's interesting. Oh, good. No, that's good insight. We'll check back in with you on that piece. It's the last question on the farming banking side I have, and then we'll jump into some more off topic, but fun questions. For your guys' bank and the loan portfolios that you service, what's the optimal customer customer base? And are you seeing a transition from the older generation of the farm down to younger generations? What trends are you seeing, and what's a kind of an optimal customer for you?
I started my career in Texas 15 years ago, lending money, and I'm a third generation farmer. So, the average age of the farmer in Texas is definitely increasing. When I started, it was 15. When I started 15 years ago, it was 55. I think it's probably closer to 62, 65 today on the average age of a farmer. My dad's 72 or 71.
Still going?
He's still going strong.
Nice.
So he's going to continue to do so. And I think that this is the first year in my career that I've really seen some guys put on the brakes and decide, okay, I'm gonna quit while I've got some equity. There's in our small community, there's 3 or 4 guys that are hanging it up this year and going to sell their equipment. I think that speaks to a growing trend. And I think that the established young farmer. Now that when you say that, that used to be the guy that was 20 or 30, and it may be the guy that's 35 to 45 now.
Okay.
But those are the guys that I see poised to grow the biggest and the most, and picking up that land as they're established. They've proven themselves on other farms, and they'll take on this land that these guys are not no longer going to farm. So I see a transition in those areas as some guys are just saying the margins are too tight and I'm tired of losing equity, and I'm going to hold on to what I've got and retire. So I think that's a growing trend, and it'll be case by case, because this year was so sporadic with our rains. There were some areas like around New Home that got a lot of rain, and then you can go in the plains and we got half an inch. So I don't think that's going to be a broad statement for every farmer on the South Plains, but it could be case by case, county by county.
You mentioned these 35-year-old farmers that are progressive. What separates them apart? Why do you think that they're going to actually go out and acquire more land to be more successful? What is if you had to kind of pick a differentiating point, is it their willingness to embrace technology? Is it their forward thinking in terms of marketing? What do you attribute that to?
I think a landlord's going to look from a perspective of who's going to be the best producer, because they're going to have a landlord. We're on 75-25 shares here in our part of the world. We're not on cash leases. So you're going to have your marketing. I mean, you're going to have your fertilizer part of it, and you're going to get your 25% of the crops. They're looking at guys that who's going to make me the most return off of this land. And they're going to look for the biggest producers. And I think you couple that with guys that are able to help them market it and get the most value out of, I made the most pounds and I got the best price that I could out of it in the year. And I yielded you the biggest return off of the acres that you have.
Well, that's good. Well, we really appreciate all the support that the bank has given us, and the opportunities we've had to get out there and meet you and your team a number of times, and share some cocktails at walk-ons or wherever it might be in town. So we've really appreciated that support.
We appreciate y'all's expertise in the area as well.
Oh, thank you. Well, I can't let you go the rest, this afternoon without at least a couple of, more interesting questions for some that might be interested in your background. So you said you went to A&M. Is that what you told me earlier?
Yes, sir.
And,
Class 2004.
Yeah. Okay. But this is important, right? So then but you live in Lubbock, where it's obviously the Red Raiders. So how do you separate the allegiance?
So I never grew up. I mean, I wasn't this is the funny thing growing up in Raiderland, and everybody said, well, how did you end up at A&M? And I said, well, I just knew better.
Okay.
So you got to have thick skin to wear maroon in Raiderland. That's all I got to say.
I bet. Now
this year's been easier. Tech's not doing well and A&M's doing better right now, but I could turn very easily.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. It's tough. You drive through there and it is Raider land. They're right in the center of town, and it is what it is. I got to ask though. I mean, you've been there long enough. Bobby Knight coming to town on the basketball side. He's got this massive reputation, going off winning NCAA titles to throwing chairs to being kicked out of the NCAA. When he came to town, how was he received?
I don't think it was. Are you gonna throw a chair at me? I don't think it was that perspective at the beginning. I think everybody gave him the benefit of doubt, and I think they realized that it helped Tech, and it's got them to the point where their day with Chris Beard. So yeah. I think everybody realized that. Helped them put them on the map.
No, definitely. And, hopefully people learn the lessons over time, not to throw chairs anymore. So, yeah. So I noticed your background there. It says water ski. You're a water skier, you're a snow skier. What tell us about your athletic background?
It's a fun hobby that I've been able to do since I was a kid. We're living in Plains. We're 3 hours away from Ruidoso, and that has Ski Apache. And so we get to make a day trip and go over there and ski if we could. So I grew up doing that in high school, and then I carried that on and was on the water ski team. at A&M, and then continue to ski today and trying to teach my kids how to ski. So it's a passion and something that we enjoy. And it's ironic that I live out here in the middle where there's nowhere, where there's no mountains or lakes really close by. We got to drive to Post, which is a 2.5 hour drive to go water skiing, but still love it. I'll drive that way if I got to. I got to do to do it.
You got to do what you got to do to get the get out there. Now, when you say you're on the A&M ski team, was it slalom? Were you jumping? What type of?
There was 3 events. There was jump, trick, and slalom, and I was a slalom skier. So they set up a course that's got 2 gates that you've got to go through at the beginning, at the end, and then 6 balls that you have to go around as the boat's going through the middle of the course. And you start at 28 miles an hour and progress to 36 miles an hour and going 2-mile increments, and then they start shortening your rope.
Okay. Now it seems to me as you describe this, I'm thinking there's 2 elements. It's kind of like a horseback rider. You know, you've got the rider and the horse is a big variable, right? You never know. How does it work in skiing? Do you have the same driver? Does everyone on the course have the same driver, or is it a team sport?
When it started, there was magnets in the course that went off a perfect pass system. So you had a cruise control on your boat essentially that timed it with those magnets on the course. Now GPS has come into play and helps you there. So that GPS and that cruise control, perfect pass, whatever you want to call it, there has really helped. And that's what creates a constant path through that course. So
is there one driver for everybody?
When you go to a tournament, there is.
Okay.
There's one driver for that tournament, but you don't take your driver and swap them out. You know, the pros probably do.
Sure.
But collegiately, it was the guy driving was the one that drove and did everybody there.
That's great. Well, I look forward to the day I can get out your way again and actually, go out to the lake, or you mentioned you like to snow ski too. I'd be happy to meet you in the mountains. So
let's do it.
One of my favorite spots is a little bit of a drive from you. It would be Telluride, Colorado. But if we could find a way to meet in the mountains, sign me up. I'll be there.
I'm with you. Let's go for it.
All right, Jason. Thanks so much, Jason with AIM Bank, and out there in Northwest Texas. Thank you very much, Jason.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Hedged Edge. Links from this episode will be in the episode description of this channel. Follow us on Twitter at ag_RCM, like our Facebook page under RCM Ag Services, and visit our website, read our blog, and subscribe to our newsletter at rcmagservices.com. If you like our show, introduce a friend and show them how to subscribe. And be sure to leave comments. We'd love to hear them.